back to Exhibit Extras, where we take you behind the scenes and give you an in-depth look at our exhibit space and our exhibit making process. So today I am here in the transportation exhibit in the Chester Inn Museum, and we're actually in the process of taking this exhibit down and getting the space ready for our next exhibit. So today we're going to look at what that process looks like, how we remove items from the case, and then how we can reset this space for another exhibit. Also, we're going to show how the space is kind of limited, and also how we can make it, how we can refresh it with depending on what exhibit we are in. So we're going to center on a couple of things. One, this large case, which currently holds 4 items as part of the transportation exhibit, and then these 2 pedestal cases behind us. So one thing to mention about the space that we're in the museum, when you're looking at exhibits and how they're going to look, how big are they going to be, this exhibit space over here in our museum is kind of in a corner. So it's a really good area to have as just one distinct standalone exhibit, but sometimes it does connect with other parts of the museum floor. So right now our transportation exhibit starts here and is spaced throughout the entire first floor, and there's this spot, then there were a couple of stations in between, and then it ends on another part of the floor. That's kind of going to be the setup for our next exhibit that is going to replace this one. So our next exhibit is actually going to be on the Chester Inn Museum itself, which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. And so it is going to start here with the first part of the exhibit, and then it's going to be spaced throughout the floor. So the first step is, actually the first step, I guess, before we even get to this part, is recognizing what exhibit is going to come in next and what you are going to need. So right now I have an idea of what the next exhibit is going to consist of, what is roughly going to go into the space. You don't really want to leave cases empty too long. So that's the first step, is sort of planning what's going to come next. But now that we are at that step, the next step is to remove the items that are currently on display. Now, the next step in our disassembling process is to empty the pedestals. Now, the 2 pedestals that are here, a little bit harder to get into than the large case. The tops are screwed on. There's a screw on each side. So the first step is to take those screws out and remove the lid, and then we're actually going to empty out the contents and then leave them empty for just a minute. And then I'll explain how we're going to transform this space and the flexibility that pedestal cases give us. What we have here with this space, I'm actually going to remove the pedestals completely from this area, which will allow us to open this space up to do something else with this exhibit. And that's, again, one of the good things about pedestals is they are movable. You can move them pretty easily. You can create different spaces. One of the things that is really useful with pedestals with a large exhibit is, again, as I mentioned, this stuff is all kind of in its own corner. So if I have this big case here, and then like maybe 1 or 2 things here, and pedestals spaced throughout, then you're kind of seeing the whole exhibit tied together between the 2 main parts of the floor. Alright, so as you can see, a little bit of open space here. Pedestals are gone, and so that's a really good example of doing something little that can drastically change the possibilities of a space that you have. Even if it's a small change in a small space, you can really be dynamic in what you are putting in. So we actually had sort of set this space aside last year to be an interactive space for some of our exhibits. we have not gotten back into doing interactive exhibit components at the moment. So now what we're going to do is change at least a little bit of the layout of what we had from our previous exhibit. So if you're someone who does come in here, local, in here, 2 to 3, 4 times a year, you're not seeing, definitely not the same exhibit, but also, even if you're seeing a new exhibit, you're also seeing a new space. And those are little dynamic things that you can do to keep things as fresh as possible, especially for your regular visitors that do come here pretty often. So what we're going to do here is put in an easel display. So that's going to be here as part of this exhibit. And then the pedestals are going to be spaced throughout the floor to connect this corner of the exhibit with the rest of the exhibit on another part of the museum floor. And one of the reasons that we try to do that down here is because our space is very narrow and it's broken up with the timelines. So there are kind of like 2 distinct parts of the floor, and at least if you've got one main exhibit, having pedestals to sort of space it out and you see different components as you're going to the museum, that's a real good way to tie things together. But to find out what's going to be on this easel, you'll have to wait and see when we do our putting our next exhibit together video and come into the museum and see what we've got put together here. So thank you all for joining us again for this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to follow along with us on our Instagram and Facebook page at Chester Inn. That's the best way to keep up with us. That's where we post most of our information. That's also where we post our videos directly on YouTube, and then we link them on Facebook as well. So thank you all again, and we will see you in our next video.